In a once-forgotten corner of Napa Valley, Ethan, a black farmer with dreams larger than the prejudices that bound him, and Sophia, a wealthy heiress yearning for freedom from the constraints imposed upon her, joined forces to revive not just a land, but also a long-lost hope. Yet, will their love and determination be enough to overcome invisible barriers and visible destruction, or will their dream turn to ashes before it is truly heard? Every journey begins with a meeting. And amidst the desolation, Ethan and Sophia found each other not only in their shared passion for winemaking, but also in a profound desire to turn dreams into reality. Their journey has only just begun, but it's already fraught with challenges and emotions. If you, too, are chasing a dream, share this story to spread the inspiration. Sophia Bennett, 27 years old, was the sole daughter of the Bennett family, owners of sprawling vineyards across Napa Valley. Their premium wines were exported to dozens of countries, making the Bennetts a symbol of American upper-class success. Yet Sophia, walking through the cold stone corridors of her family's mansion, saw none of that glory. The glittering chandelier lights reflected off the marble floors like the stage lights of a grand theater one, where she was forced to play a role that wasn't her own. The Bennett estate, with its classic European architecture and frequent lavish parties, stood as an emblem of power. Guests, tycoons, politicians came not just to savor the celebrated wine, but to seal secret business deals. For Sophia, however, it was a gilded prison. Her father, Richard Bennett, was a formidable wine mogul who had built an empire through shrewd deals and unrelenting control. Whenever the weight of expectations bore down on her, Sophia would sneak down to the wine cellar. It was the only place in the house where she felt truly safe. The cellar was another world, quiet, filled with the earthy scent of oak barrels. Rows of vintage bottles stood neatly on wooden racks, each adorned with her father's signature label. But Sophia wasn't drawn to those bottles. In a hidden corner of the cellar, she kept a private shelf filled with her own creations, rough blends she had crafted herself. Sophia didn't just love wine, she was enchanted by it. She marveled at how a single grape variety could yield vastly different flavors when grown in different soils. To her, wine was not a product to be sold, but a story, a living artwork. In a small red leather journal, Sophia recorded her bold ideas. She experimented with native grape varieties, infusing them with unusual ingredients like cardamom, lavender, and even dried orange peel. But these experiments had to remain a secret. She knew her father would ridicule her efforts, dismissing them with a cold rebuke.
Wine doesn't need creativity. It needs to sell.
Richard Bennett was a man of absolutes. To him, everything had a price. Wine, in his eyes, was not art but a tool for expanding power. He expected Sophia to step seamlessly into her role as the heir to his empire, a dutiful extension of his will. And that wasn't all. Richard had already decided that Sophia would marry Lucas Chambers, the son of another influential wine family, to secure the family's market dominance and protect their legacy. Sophia had met Lucas Chambers at several grand gatherings. He was a man oozing self-confidence to the point of arrogance, preferring to flaunt his possessions rather than his achievements. At one such event, Lucas had smirked and said to her,
"Don't overthink it, Sophia. Your father and mine have already planned everything. We just need to follow through."
Sophia knew Lucas didn't love her. She didn't love him either. To him, she was merely a piece in a strategic alliance between two powerful families. One evening, as she sat in the cellar flipping through the pages of her red journal, the flickering candlelight cast shadows across her face, one half illuminated by passion, the other steeped in the darkness of fear. She wondered aloud,
"Where would I go if I left it all behind? Do I have the courage to chase my dream?"
Her father's voice echoed in her mind, sharp and unyielding.
"Do you want to be a dreamy artist, or do you want to live in this castle? I've made the choice for you. All you have to do is follow it."
Sophia felt suffocated. Staying meant losing herself entirely, but leaving meant forfeiting everything: her family, her security, and her name.
Who am I without the Bennett name?
But when her eyes fell on a bottle of her own creation, a spark reignited within her. That bottle wasn't just wine, it was proof of her ability, a testament to the dream she had hidden away. One night, during a family dinner with Lucas Chambers present, Richard made his announcement.
Sophia, I've arranged everything. You'll marry Lucas in the spring. It's the best decision for this family.
Sophia set down her fork, her eyes blazing with defiance.
I am not a commodity for you to trade. I don't love Lucas, and I will not marry him.
Richard slammed his hand on the table, his voice icy and final.
There's no place for defiance in this family. If you refuse, don't expect me to help you when you fail.
Swallowing her fear, Sophia replied quietly but resolutely.
Then I'll take responsibility for my own life.
That night, Sophia returned to the wine cellar. She gazed at the bottle she had crafted, flipped through her red journal one last time, and made her decision.
This dream is worth fighting for, and if I must, I'll give up everything to pursue it.
Sophia had chosen her path. It was fraught with obstacles and losses, but it was the only path where she could truly be herself. Ethan Walker, 25 years old, was born into a small farming family in the southern United States, where the red soil clung to the footsteps of every laborer. His parents, descendants of freed slaves, toiled relentlessly in cotton fields and vineyards to sustain their family. Though they had little wealth, they clung tightly to a belief that became a cornerstone of Ethan's upbringing.
The land never betrays anyone. If you love it and care for it, it will give back what you deserve.
This philosophy etched itself into Ethan's heart from a young age. Under the relentless southern sun, Ethan learned the art of viticulture from his father, pruning vines, checking the ripeness of grapes, and most importantly, understanding the language of the soil. Growing up, Ethan faced racial prejudice. Wealthy landowners often treated his family as mere labor machines, undeserving of attention or respect. Yet Ethan harbored no resentment. As a teenager, he began working as a seasonal laborer at various vineyards. During breaks, he would sit silently among the vines, his dirt-streaked hands resting on the soil, eyes closed, listening to the wind rustling through the leaves.
The soil doesn't speak with words, but if you listen, you'll feel what it needs.
His father had once told him, and Ethan held on to this wisdom. When his family lost their farm due to insurmountable debts, Ethan didn't cry. Instead, he poured himself into learning. While others worked for wages, Ethan observed everything. Why did some vines produce sweet, luscious grapes while others yielded bitter ones? Why did red clay soil imbue wine with boldness while sandy soil brought out subtlety? These questions became his driving force. Ethan wasn't just working, he was decoding the language of the soil and the vines. He realized that every patch of earth told its own story, and the vines were its faithful narrators. When Ethan arrived in Napa Valley, he had nothing but a small bag and an enormous dream. He scraped together savings from odd jobs to rent a barren plot of land on the eastern side of the valley, land no one else wanted to cultivate. To Ethan, the land wasn't barren, it was brimming with potential. He believed the soil was merely dormant, waiting for someone to awaken it. Each morning, Ethan knelt beside the fledgling vines, painstakingly removing small stones from the soil with his bare hands. He worked patiently, knowing that before vines could flourish, the land itself needed healing. He enriched the soil with organic compost, volcanic ash, and water, nurturing it as tenderly as a healer tending to a wounded patient. Ethan often spoke to the vines as if they were old friends. One stormy evening, he found a newly planted vine leaning precariously after heavy rains. Placing his hand on its base, he whispered,
I won't let you fall. You just need a little more time, a little more care.
Locals mocked Ethan, calling him a dreamer. But he didn't mind. Ethan believed that to create true wine, one had to understand the soil before understanding the vine. At the end of each long day, Ethan would sit amidst the rows of vines, his hand resting on the earth. He would close his eyes and breathe deeply, savoring the scent of freshly tilled soil mingling with the grass. To him, this was the land.
Speaking back,
Acknowledging the love he poured into it. To Ethan, every cluster of grapes was not merely raw material for wine, but a crystallization of dreams. He thought of his parents, who had sweat and bled for their vines but never tasted the sweetness of their labor. Ethan vowed to change that.
every drop of wine I make will tell a story of the land, the people, and the dreams buried within it.
When Ethan began experimenting with winemaking on his modest plot, he lacked modern equipment. He crushed grapes by hand, fermented them in repurposed barrels, and regulated temperatures by wrapping the barrels in old blankets. Despite the makeshift process, Ethan infused every step with heart and soul. When he opened the first barrel of his wine, the rich aroma brought tears to his eyes. It wasn't the scent of perfection, but of perseverance, faith, and hope. Reviving this land was not just a personal goal for Ethan. He envisioned creating opportunities for immigrant families and marginalized communities like his own. He believed that rejuvenated soil could provide a fresh start for many. Standing among the young vines, Ethan turned to his only close friend in Napa Valley and said,
"They think this land is worthless, but I think it's just waiting for a new story, and I'll be the one to write it."
In Napa Valley, on a late autumn day, gray clouds drifted lazily across the sky. Pale golden sunlight filtered through the sparse leaves, scattering across the dry, cracked earth. The air carried the earthy scent of worn-out soil mingled with the faint dampness of the previous night's rain, a fragrance that whispered of decay but hinted at the possibility of renewal. Sophia had just left a meeting filled with dry numbers and rigid plans. She walked along a narrow dirt path leading to the Eastern Valley, a site under evaluation for potential investment. The rhythmic clack of her high heels on the dry ground merged with the whisper of the wind rustling through bare branches. As she approached the area, Sophia suddenly stopped. In the desolate scene of withered vines and barren land, she noticed a man working. She stood still, her gaze fixed on the figure before her. He was kneeling by a scraggly vine, his sun-bronzed hands meticulously picking small stones from the soil, his movements tender, almost reverent, as though tending to a living being. His presence was quiet yet radiated strength, not the brute force of muscles, but the enduring power of belief and determination. Ethan Walker, clad in a coarse work shirt stained with mud, looked up at the sound of Sophia's footsteps. His dark eyes, deep and shadowed like the earth after rain, reflected a calm intensity, a quiet confidence. In a voice low and steady, he spoke.
"If you've come to see a dead vineyard, you'll be disappointed. It's not dead yet."
Sophia blinked, startled by his unexpected words, but her gaze remained locked on his weathered face.
"What do you mean?"
she asked. "May,
"The soil is barren. The vines are withered. Everything here looks like it's been abandoned for ages."
Ethan smiled faintly, his eyes shifting to the vines before him as though he were speaking directly to them.
"The land isn't dead, and neither are these vines. They're just asleep. Give them care, give them love, and they'll bloom again."
He stood, pulling a small, unmarked glass bottle from his pocket.
"Would you like to try?"
he asked, extending it to her.
"This is wine I made from the leftover grapes. They're not perfect, but I think they're still worth recognizing."
Sophia took the bottle, curiosity flickering in her eyes. She poured a small amount, noticing the wine's hue. It wasn't as bright or clear as the polished wine she was used to. Instead, it was deeper, richer, as though it held an ancient story within. As she took a sip, her tongue encountered a flavor that was vibrant and bold, yet unrefined, like a narrative still in the process of being written.
"This flavor,"
she murmured, surprised.
"It's unlike any wine I've tasted. It feels alive, like it's telling a story."
Ethan's lips curved into a small, knowing smile, his eyes glinting with a quiet joy.
"That's because this story isn't finished yet. I've only just begun writing it."
Sophia couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, nor could she forget the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about the land. There was something in him, his steadfastness, his belief, and the way he perceived the world that unsettled her, yet simultaneously made her feel seen in a way she never had before. In the days that followed, Sophia found excuses to return to the Eastern Valley. Initially, she justified it as wanting to survey the site more thoroughly for her family's investment plans. But with each visit, her true purpose became clearer. She wanted to hear Ethan talk. One afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, its golden light bathed the slowly reviving vines. Sophia stood quietly beside Ethan as he worked. He was carefully tying thin cords to support the tender stems of young vines, his movements purposeful yet gentle, as if speaking to the plants through his touch. Sophia watched, feeling as though Ethan wasn't just tending to the vines, he was conversing with them. Breaking the silence, she asked,
"Do you really believe it, that they can come back to life on this land?"
Without looking up, Ethan continued his work, his voice calm and certain.
"I don't just believe it, I know it. The land and the vines never betray us. If we pour our hearts into them, they will respond."
Sophia fell silent, his words resonating deeply within her. She thought about her own life, her father's relentless expectations, the dreams she had hidden away for so long. Had anyone ever believed in her the way Ethan believed in this soil and these vines? Taking a step closer, Sophia fixed her gaze on the gnarled roots of the vines. For the first time, she allowed herself to shed the strong facade she always wore around others.
"I used to dream,"
she began, her voice trembling slightly.
"I used to dream of making wine that told my own story. Something that, with just one sip, people could taste everything. This land, these grapes, and the person who made it."
Ethan paused, turning to face her. His eyes met hers not with curiosity, but with the quiet understanding of someone who knew exactly what it meant to dream against all odds.
"Then why did you stop dreaming?"
he asked softly. Sophia laughed bitterly, shaking her head.
"Because my father always said that wine only needs to sell. It doesn't need a soul. Every idea I've ever had, he dismissed as foolish. He's already mapped out my entire life. Inherit his empire, marry someone I don't love. If I walk away, I'll have nothing left."
Ethan didn't reply immediately. Instead, he knelt, picking up a small cluster of grapes left on the vine. The fruit was small, imperfect, but its skins glistened with life.
"Do you see this?"
he said, holding up the cluster.
"Most people would say it's worthless, too small, too insignificant. But to me, it's the most valuable thing on this field because it's proof that life still exists here. It's not big, it's not perfect, but it's here, and it deserves to be noticed."
He placed the cluster gently in Sophia's hand, his eyes soft yet challenging.
"You're the same. Your story deserves to be told. We don't get to choose where we're born, but we can choose how we live and what we leave behind."
Sophia stared at the grapes in her hand, her heart stirring with emotions she had long buried. She had always known she didn't belong to the world her father had forced her into. But for the first time, she began to admit to herself that she could choose a different path, her own path. In the days that followed, Sophia found more and more reasons to return. Every conversation with Ethan felt like a spark, igniting a little more courage within her, a little more belief that her dream was worth pursuing. Late autumn's evening cast a crimson glow across the vineyard, bathing the landscape in warm hues of hope and renewal. Sophia and Ethan sat side by side on the wooden steps of an old barn, the distant rows of vines, once barren and forlorn, now showing signs of rebirth under Ethan's careful hand. A gentle breeze carried the earthy scent of soil mingled with the warmth of aged wood, wrapping the moment in a serene yet poignant stillness. For the first time in years, Sophia felt a sense of belonging, though anxiety lingered like shadows at the edge of her thoughts. Ethan poured 2 small glasses of his handmade wine, the product of his labor and heart. Sophia lifted her glass, watching the ruby-red liquid shimmer in the fading light. As the wine swirled, so did her thoughts, heavy with uncertainty. Her voice trembled as she finally broke the silence.
I've lived someone else's life for too long, Ethan. I've done what my father wanted, tried to become the person he expected me to be, but every day I felt like I'm losing myself.
Ethan didn't rush to respond. Instead, he turned his steady, knowing gaze to her, his silence saying more than words ever could I understand. Sophia continued, her words barely audible as they drifted into the cool autumn air.
If I stay, I won't be me anymore. But if I leave, I lose everything. My family, my name, my safe.
She set the glass down, her hands fidgeting, betraying the turmoil inside her. Turning to Ethan, she searched his face, her eyes brimming with a fragile hope.
But what if I start over here, with you? With this dream we could build together?
Ethan's eyes softened, his voice calm, but resonating with quiet strength.
I don't want you to make this choice just because of my dream, but if you stay, I promise you'll never face it alone. I'll fight for this dream and for you.
Sophia felt her heart thrum wildly, his words piercing through her doubts and fears, reaching the very core of her. Ethan's voice dropped slightly, carrying a raw vulnerability she had never seen in him before.
From the moment I met you, I knew you were different. You didn't just see dead vines. You saw the story they could tell. And just like that, I see a new story we could write together.
He took her hand, his fingers warm and firm around hers, his eyes gleaming under the deep amber glow of the sunset.
Let me walk this path with you, Sophia. Let's turn this place into something the world will never forget. Not for money, but for love and belief.
Sophia felt a fire ignite within her, a flame she had long suppressed. The fear and hesitation that had kept her chained now seemed distant, like faint echoes of a life she no longer belonged to. Taking a deep breath, she met Ethan's gaze, her voice clear and resolute.
Ethan,
she said, his name carrying the weight of her decision.
You've shown me. I don't have to live for anyone else's expectations. I'll stay. I want to walk this path with you, not just to tell the story of this land, but ours as well.
A gentle, steadfast smile spread across Ethan's face, a reflection of his unwavering faith. He clasped both of her hands tightly, his voice steady and sure.
Then let's start right here, right now. You and me, together.
Sophia nodded, her heart lighter than it had ever been. For the first time, she felt truly free. In that moment, she knew she had found what she had been searching for, someone who believed in her, a dream worth sacrificing for, and a future she could finally call her own. The sunset faded, but the bond between them illuminated the space around them. It wasn't just love that united them, it was a shared commitment to a dream larger than themselves. From a distance, the young vines swayed gently in the breeze, as though bearing silent witness to the start of a story. A story not only about love, but about belief, sacrifice, and the power to create something extraordinary. No more words were needed. Their intertwined hands told the promise of a journey they would face together through trials, through losses, and ultimately through triumph. The Bennett dining room was meticulously arranged, as always, a long table draped in pristine white linen, baccarat crystal glasses shimmering under the light of an enormous chandelier. The scene was flawless, but the atmosphere was ice cold. Sophia sat at one end of the table, directly opposite Lucas Chambers, the man her father had arranged for her to marry. Lucas lounged in his chair with smug confidence, a glass of red wine in one hand and his other idly spinning a gold ring on his finger. His half-smile hinted that he already knew the evening's outcome. At the head of the table sat Richard Bennett, exuding authority like a king presiding over his court. He surveyed the room, his sharp gaze finally settling on Sophia before he spoke, his tone calm but laden with dominance.
Sophia, the Chambers family has agreed. Your wedding to Lucas will take place at the end of the year. This is a crucial decision for our family, a rare opportunity I won't let you refuse.
The words fell like a gavel strike. Sophia set down her fork and raised her head, looking directly at her father. For a moment, she didn't see the man who had once lifted her onto his shoulders as a child. She saw someone willing to sacrifice his daughter for power. Richard continued, his voice cold and unyielding.
Lucas is the perfect choice. He has status, reputation, and a deep understanding of the wine industry. With him, you'll have a stable and prestigious life, just as your mother has always stood beside me.
Sophia let out a bitter laugh, her eyes locking onto her father's.
Prestige? Is that what you call the life where mother gave up her dreams to stand in your shadow? Is that what you want for me too?
Richard's expression tightened briefly before he regained composure.
You don't understand. This is about duty, about the responsibility of being a Bennett. None of us have the luxury of choosing. We all do what's best for the family.
Across the table, Lucas smirked.
Sophia, you should consider yourself lucky. Not everyone gets the chance to become a Chambers.
Sophia's patience snapped. She pushed back her chair, the scrape of wood against marble ringing loudly in the room. All eyes turned to her as she stood, her voice clear and steady.
I've thought long and hard about this, and I can't do what you want, Father. I will not marry Lucas.
Richard's brows furrowed, his gaze hardening into steel.
What do you mean by that?
Sophia drew a deep breath, her heart pounding but her voice unwavering.
I found someone I love, someone who shares my dreams, someone who sees me for who I truly am. I want to live my own life, not be a pawn in your plans.
The air in the room froze. Richard rose abruptly, his voice thundering like a storm.
Sophia, you're disgracing this family. Do you have any idea of the consequences of your foolish decision? The Bennett name will be ruined, and you'll never recover from it.
Sophia clenched her fists, her eyes glistening with unshed tears but burning with resolve.
Father, I'm not a commodity to be traded. I'm a person, and I have the right to choose my own path. If living true to myself means losing everything, then I'm willing to pay that price.
Richard slammed his hand onto the table, making the crystal glasses tremble.
If you walk out of here, you will no longer be my daughter. You will receive no support from this family. You'll have to face the world on your own.
Sophia met his gaze, her voice firm and unyielding.
I've been preparing for that for a long time, Father.
Lucas rose as well, raising an eyebrow, his tone laced with disdain.
Fine, ruin your future if you want, but don't expect me to be waiting when you come crawling back.
Sophia didn't bother to respond. Her expression remained resolute, her focus unmoving. Throughout the tense exchange, Eleanor Bennett, Sophia's mother, had remained silent, though her heart ached as she watched her daughter face her father's wrath. Beneath the table, Eleanor clutched her napkin tightly, trying to maintain composure. As Sophia turned and walked out of the dining room, Eleanor looked at her husband with eyes full of quiet disappointment, but still said nothing. Sophia's footsteps echoed through the silent space, each step a resounding declaration of her choice. She walked with her head held high, knowing she was leaving behind everything: safety, family, and privilege. But for the first time, she felt truly alive, unshackled from the expectations that had bound her for so long. When the door closed behind her, it marked the end of a life she no longer wanted and the beginning of one she would finally live for herself. Sophia stood in the familiar confines of her bedroom, once her safest retreat in the vast Bennett estate. The soft glow of the bedside lamp illuminated the room, casting a warm light on framed family photographs and childhood trinkets scattered across the shelves. But tonight, these once treasured objects felt foreign, distant, no longer tied to the person she was becoming. Carefully, she folded a few pieces of clothing and placed them into a small suitcase. Her red leather journal, the keeper of her dreams, went in last. On the desk sat a photo of her mother, Eleanor, encased in an intricately carved wooden frame. The woman in the picture seemed to watch her, a bittersweet reminder of the ties she was about to leave behind. Sophia knew that when she stepped out of this room, she would no longer belong to this world. This was the path she had chosen, a path without a way back. The door creaked open quietly, startling her. Sophia turned to find her mother standing in the doorway. The light from the lamp illuminated Eleanor's face, revealing the gentle lines etched by time in a pair of eyes that still shone with the same warmth and understanding as they had when Sophia was a child. Eleanor lingered for a moment, as if giving her daughter the choice to acknowledge her presence. When Sophia said nothing, she stepped into the room, her fingers clutching a small handkerchief, a familiar gesture Sophia recognized as her mother's habit when she was nervous.
"Sophia,"
Eleanor said softly, her voice low and careful, as though afraid to break the fragile silence. Sophia turned, her red-rimmed eyes meeting her mother's.
"Mother,"
she replied, her voice trembling, emotions thick in her throat. Eleanor's gaze fell to the suitcase, a flicker of pain crossing her face. She had known this moment would come since the confrontation at dinner the night before, but knowing didn't make it any easier. Still, seeing her daughter on the cusp of leaving everything behind filled her heart with a sorrow she couldn't suppress.
"You've made up your mind, haven't you?"
Eleanor asked, her tone barely above a whisper. Sophia nodded.
"Yes, Mother. I can't live the life Father wants for me. I've tried, but I just can't."
Eleanor stepped closer, her eyes searching her daughter's face. She placed a warm hand on Sophia's, her touch steady and reassuring.
"I don't blame you, Sophia. I understand. And I'm proud of you for having the courage to do this."
The words broke the tension that had been holding Sophia together. Tears welled up in her eyes and spilled over, tracing silent paths down her cheeks. Yet despite her tears, a glimmer of determination remained.
"I'm sorry,"
Sophia whispered.
"I know I've upset Father, the whole family, but if I stay, I'll lose myself. I can't."
Eleanor pulled Sophia into her arms, her embrace gentle yet unyielding. She stroked her daughter's hair as she had done so many times when Sophia was a little girl.
"You don't have to apologize to me, my darling,"
Eleanor murmured.
"You've chosen the right path for you, and that's all that matters. No matter what, I'll always be on your side."
Sophia leaned into her mother's embrace, letting the warmth dissolve the loneliness and fear she had carried for so long. After a long moment, Eleanor released her hands trembling slightly as she reached into her pocket and retrieved a small wooden box. It was a family heirloom, adorned with intricate carvings, containing generations' worth of precious jewelry. Sophia's eyes widened as Eleanor held out the box.
"Mother, this is the family's legacy. Why are you giving it to me?"
Eleanor's smile was gentle but filled with emotion.
"These pieces mean nothing if they can't help you when you need them most. Take them, Sophia. Use them to begin again. Don't be afraid. You're stronger than you think."
Sophia shook her head, hesitant.
"But they're yours. And the family's. I can't take them. You should keep them."
Eleanor pressed the box into Sophia's hands, her grip firm.
"The true legacy isn't in these jewels, Sophia. It's in what you create, in the way you tell your story. Use these to make your dreams come true. Make me proud by living true to your heart."
Sophia clutched the box, tears spilling anew not from despair, but from gratitude and hope. She gazed at her mother, overwhelmed by the love and belief that shone through Eleanor's words. Eleanor embraced her again, this time longer, tighter, as though pouring all her love and strength into her daughter.
"I know you'll succeed, Sophia. You'll make your dreams a reality. Your father will come to understand. But first, you must follow what you believe in."
Sophia nodded, her hand clasping her mother's, trying to memorize the feeling of safety and unconditional support.
"Mother, I promise I won't let you down."
Eleanor cupped Sophia's face, her eyes brimming with both sorrow and pride.
"You've never let me down, my dear. You just need to trust yourself as I've always trusted you."
With one final look at her mother, Sophia picked up her suitcase and the heirloom box. As she walked out of her room, Eleanor watched her go, her heart heavy yet filled with hope. Sophia left the house with her head held high, her steps echoing like a solemn declaration of freedom. Behind her, she closed the door on a life she no longer belonged to, walking toward a future she could finally claim as her own. Sophia walked through the stillness of the night, each step resonating softly in the vast expanse around her. The small suitcase she pulled over the gravel path made faint rustling sounds, mingling with the gentle whispers of leaves swaying in the breeze. In her other hand, she carried the family's heirloom jewelry box, a silent testament to her mother's quiet sacrifice and the entirety of her resources to begin anew. At the end of the dirt road, Ethan stood waiting. His figure was silhouetted by the moonlight, his presence steady and resolute. In his hand, he held a small spade, a humble tool, yet one that symbolized their shared dream, building something enduring from the ground up. Sophia paused, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. This was the moment she knew would change her life forever. Ethan saw her approaching, the moonlight casting a soft glow over her, making her seem both delicate and unshakable. His eyes caught the box in her hand, and he stepped closer, his voice carrying a mix of awe and emotion.
"Sophia,"
he said softly, the name barely escaping his lips. She smiled faintly, her step steady as she reached him. Without hesitation, she placed the box in his hands. Her gaze, steady and shining, held no trace of regret or uncertainty.
"This is everything I have,"
she said, her voice gentle yet firm.
"I've given up my family, my reputation, and my safety to follow you, to follow the dream we promised to create together."
Ethan stared at the box in his hands, his throat tightening with emotion. He opened it slowly, revealing the collection of ornate jewelry inside. These weren't just valuables, they were symbols of love, trust, and Sophia's unyielding belief in him.
"Sophia?"
he began, his voice trembling.
"You didn't have to do this. I never wanted you to sacrifice so much for me. I can't."
Sophia placed her hand over his, her touch silencing his protest. Her gaze met his, unwavering, filled with both tenderness and conviction.
"Ethan, I didn't do this just for you. I did this for me, for us. You showed me there's another path, one where I can be true to myself and my dreams. This isn't a sacrifice, it's my choice."
Ethan shook his head slightly, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He struggled for words but found none that could fully express what he felt. Instead, his eyes spoke of gratitude and a deep, quiet reverence.
"Sophia, I don't know how to thank you,"
he said, his voice heavy with sincerity.
"You've given up so much. I'm scared I'll never be enough, that I won't live up to what you deserve."
Sophia smiled, her hands tightening over his, grounding him.
"You don't have to be anything more than yourself, Ethan. That's all I've ever needed. Together we'll create something extraordinary. Trust in our dream as I trust in you."
The warmth of her touch and the certainty in her words filled Ethan with a profound sense of purpose. He felt a responsibility, not just to their shared dream, but to Sophia's unwavering faith in him. Carefully, he closed the jewelry box and set it aside. Taking both her hands in his, he looked directly into her eyes, his voice steady and resolute.
"Sophia, I promise you, we won't just plant vines or make wine. We'll bring this land back to life, and I'll make sure you never regret choosing this path with me."
Sophia's smile grew, her eyes reflecting complete trust.
"I've never regretted it, Ethan, and I know we'll succeed."
Under the moonlit sky, surrounded by the quiet whispers of the vineyard, they stood together, hand in hand, their gazes fixed not on the past they had left behind, but on the future they would build. The vines around them, bathed in silver light, seemed to watch silently, bearing witness to the start of a story written not only with love but with resilience and hope. Together, Sophia and Ethan were more than partners, they were co-authors of a dream destined to grow and thrive under their care. Sophia and Ethan have found each other, but their true challenges have only just begun. If you find this story inspiring, don't forget to like and share so more people can discover it. The golden hues of twilight bathed Napa Valley, casting long shadows over the eastern land. Once the heart of the valley, the soil here now lay barren and cracked, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Withered vines reached skyward like desperate hands, pleading for salvation. Sophia stood beside Ethan atop a small hill overlooking the desolate expanse. In her hand, she held a deed to the land, a document she had obtained by selling the heirloom jewelry her mother had entrusted to her. Ethan remained silent, his gaze fixed on the paper. He knew the weight of what it symbolized, not just the price Sophia had paid in wealth, but the life of security and comfort she had chosen to leave behind.
"Sophia,"
he began, his voice rough with emotion.
"you've given up so much for this dream. I don't know if I'm worthy of everything you've sacrificed."
Sophia turned to him, her hand reaching for his. Her eyes glowed with an unshakable faith as she clasped his fingers tightly.
"This isn't a sacrifice, Ethan,"
she said firmly.
"It's my choice. I believe this land isn't dead. It's simply waiting for us to write a new story on it."
Ethan's grip on her hand tightened, his heart swelling with both gratitude and an unyielding resolve. Standing there together, under the fading light of the day, they made an unspoken vow. The land that stretched before them, lifeless and forgotten, would become a testament to their belief, their love, and their dreams. On their first day working the field, Sophia and Ethan carried with them immense hopes. But when the first shovel pierced the soil, the dry, hollow sound was unsettling. The ground was hard as stone, crumbling into brittle fragments like old bones. The once thriving vineyard now lay barren, devoid of life. Ethan knelt and scooped up a handful of soil, letting it sift through his fingers like sand. His jaw tightened, and his eyes darkened with concern.
"This soil is like a body suffering from a severe illness,"
he said, his voice tinged with bitterness.
"We need to heal it, but it won't be easy."
Beside him, Sophia gazed down at the withered vines. She had thought farming was simply a matter of hard work, but this was more than labor, it was a battle against nature itself. They began the arduous task of reviving the land. Ethan spread organic compost and volcanic ash, believing it could restore the soil's lost nutrients. Day after day, they toiled under the scorching sun, bending over to till the earth, scattering compost with shovels, and mixing the soil by hand. For Sophia, tasks that seemed straightforward proved to be formidable challenges. Her soft hands, accustomed to holding pens and paper, blistered and bled from gripping tools and shovels. One evening, after a relentless day of labor under the sun, Sophia collapsed onto the ground, her hands trembling and her eyes stinging with exhaustion and frustration.
"Ethan,"
she murmured, her voice cracking.
"I don't know if I can do this. Everything feels so hopeless."
Ethan sat down beside her, his eyes gentle yet unwavering.
"Sophia,"
he said, his voice steady but full of conviction.
"You gave up everything to follow this dream. We can't turn back now. If you trust this land, it will trust us in return."
His words sparked something deep within her, a reminder of why she had chosen this path. She took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from her brow, and pushed herself back to her feet. Ethan stood beside her, offering a quiet smile. Together they resumed their work, knowing the road ahead would be grueling but worth every step. This wasn't just a task, it was a promise to the land and to each other. The first summer brought a record-breaking drought to Napa Valley. The newly planted vines began to wither, their leaves yellowing and their stems thinning to resemble brittle twigs. With limited options and even fewer resources, Ethan and Sophia resolved to use the scarce water they had to save the vines, one by one. Every night, they took turns hauling water from a distant well, pouring their hopes into each parched root. Sophia, unaccustomed to such grueling labor, pushed through the pain. Each bucket of water she carried felt heavier than the last. Her hands blistered, her legs ached, but she refused to stop. One morning, as the sun cast its golden light over the struggling vineyard, Sophia noticed the first green buds breaking through the fragile branches. Her breath caught, and tears welled in her eyes.
"Ethan,"
she called, her voice trembling.
"we have a chance. They're not dead. They're fighting with us."
Ethan approached, his gaze following hers to the small but unmistakable signs of life. He nodded, his expression steady but shadowed with concern.
"Nature never gives in easily, Sophia,"
he said, his voice tinged with caution.
"We're going to have to fight harder than this."
His words hung in the air, a reminder that their journey was far from over. Yet for the first time in weeks, Sophia allowed herself a glimmer of hope. These vines, like them, were proving that survival was possible even in the harshest conditions. As soon as the drought ended, a notorious pest appeared: phylloxera, the silent destroyer of vineyards. The remaining old vines were attacked, their stems gnarled, leaves riddled with holes, and roots slowly dying. Ethan discovered the infestation while inspecting the last vines. His face went pale as he recognized the unmistakable signs.
"Phylloxera,"
he muttered, his voice rough with despair.
"If we don't uproot them all, they'll destroy the entire field."
Standing beside him, Sophia felt as though the ground beneath her was crumbling. Uprooting the vines wasn't just a loss of effort, but the end of a fragile hope they had nurtured. But they had no choice. One by one, the infected vines were uprooted, their roots burned to eliminate the disease. One evening after the last vine had been pulled, Ethan slumped to the ground, his head in his hands. His voice broke as he said,
"Why is everything so difficult? Sometimes I think this land doesn't want to be revived."
Sophia sat down beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her voice was soft but resolute.
"Ethan, if this land could speak, it would thank you for not abandoning it. Our dream was never meant to be easy, but I've never once thought of giving up. I just need you to believe in it, as much as I believe in you."
Her words made Ethan look at her again, a new glimmer of hope shining in his eyes. Sophia's unwavering determination became the guiding light through their darkest days. Born into comfort, Sophia had never done hard labor before. Now, she immersed herself in a world entirely different, where blistered hands and sweat-streaked days were her reality. In the early days, she often sat in silence, staring at her swollen, red hands, feeling lost. But she knew she couldn't afford to give up. One day, as she hauled a bucket of water from the well, it grew so heavy that she stumbled and fell, spilling water all over herself. Ethan rushed to her side, worry etched into his face.
"Sophia, you don't have to push yourself this hard,"
he said. "Hey!"
"I don't want you to wear yourself out."
Sophia wiped her face, her eyes shining with determination.
"If I can't do this, Ethan, then I don't deserve the dream I've chosen. I can't turn back now."
The challenges didn't break Sophia and Ethan, they forged them. The hardships transformed them from dreamers into warriors on this unforgiving land. When the first tender green shoots emerged from the young vines, a symbol of revival, Sophia grasped Ethan's hand tightly, tears glistening in her eyes.
"Ethan,"
she said, her voice trembling with emotion.
"We haven't just brought this land back to life. We've learned how to bring ourselves back to life too."
In Napa Valley, there were seasoned farmers, men and women who had cultivated the land for generations, mastering the craft of winemaking. But they had also witnessed their fair share of failures, families forced to abandon their dreams due to unforgiving nature, dwindling finances, or challenges beyond their control. To them, Sophia and Ethan were just naive dreamers, blind to the harsh realities of the work they had undertaken. At a small agricultural supply store in the town center, Sophia stepped inside. Her clothes were dusty, her hands calloused from days of relentless labor. Walking past shelves stocked with fertilizers, tools, and rolls of vine ties, she headed toward the counter to purchase more supplies. The bell above the door jingled, marking the arrival of someone unfamiliar. The older man behind the counter gave Sophia a quick once-over. His eyes narrowed, as if trying to determine whether she was capable of handling anything that required serious effort.
"What do you need?"
he asked, his tone dry and devoid of warmth. Sophia maintained a polite smile as she listed the items she required. But when she mentioned that she and Ethan were rehabilitating the Eastern Valley land, the man froze mid-motion and raised an eyebrow.
"You're talking about that land?"
he said, incredulous.
"The dead zone? Well, I hope you know it's nothing but rocks and dust. Plenty of people have tried before, and all of them failed. What makes you think you're any different?"
Around the store, a few other customers turned their attention to Sophia. A woman near the counter snickered and leaned toward the man standing next to her.
"Another pair of starry-eyed kids?"
she whispered loudly enough for Sophia to hear.
"They all think they can work miracles, but they always leave with empty hands and empty pockets."
Sophia felt her cheeks flush with heat as their words cut into her like sharp blades. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, determined not to let their skepticism rattle her.
"Yes?"
she began, her voice calm but firm.
"We know it won't be easy, but if we don't try, then who will?"
The older man shook his head, his expression tinged with pity.
"Passion doesn't change reality. If I were you, I'd save my money for something more practical. Because take it from me, that land has nothing to offer but disappointment."
Sophia held his gaze, her resolve unwavering. She didn't respond further, knowing there was no use in convincing someone who had already decided their failure was inevitable. Instead, she paid for her supplies and left the store, the whispers and doubtful stares trailing behind her. As she stepped back into the sunlight, Sophia tightened her grip on the bags of tools and fertilizer in her hands. The sting of the encounter lingered, but so did her determination. She and Ethan weren't just fighting for the land, they were fighting to prove to themselves, and to everyone else, that dreams, no matter how improbable, were worth chasing. That night, Sophia returned to the field where Ethan was mending a broken fence. The moonlight bathed the land, creating a serene yet quietly powerful atmosphere. She set the bags of fertilizer down and sat beside him, her face showing a hint of weariness.
"They laugh at us, Ethan,"
she said softly, her voice tinged with pain.
"They think we're wasting time and money, that this land is dead, and we can't change that."
Ethan stopped working, turning to her. His eyes burned with a mix of anger and compassion.
"They don't know who we are, Sophia, and they don't understand what we've sacrificed to get here."
Sophia met his gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears but still resolute.
"Ethan, I don't need to prove anything to them. I only need to prove it to ourselves that we can do this. Because if we don't believe in our dream, who else will?"
Ethan was silent for a long moment, letting her words sink in. Finally, he nodded, taking her hand in his.
"We will do it, Sophia. And one day, they'll look back and realize just how wrong they were."
They stood together, looking out at the vast field before them. Under the moonlight, the young vines stood quietly, as if promising a future full of hope. A few days later, while they were working in the field, a supply truck passed by. The people on the truck pointed toward them, their laughter cutting through the still air like a knife.
"Look at those two,"
one of them shouted.
"It's like they're starring in some movie. Let's see how long they last."
Sophia didn't turn around, but she heard every word. Her hands gripped the hoe tighter, her lips pressed into a firm line. Ethan walked over, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. His voice was gentle yet steady.
"Don't let them get to you. Those people don't understand that the greatest faith is believing in yourself."
Sophia nodded, returning to her work. She knew their words weren't the truth. The only truth was that every day, they were one step closer to their dream. The ridicule from the community didn't weaken Sophia and Ethan's resolve. If anything, it solidified their determination. Against the skeptical stares, their belief in each other and their vision burned brighter. Side by side, they continued to fight for a dream worth everything they had. Under the scorching sun, and amidst the quiet whispers of the vines, their hope was unshakable, a beacon that outshone all doubt. A powerful storm swept through Napa Valley one October night, leaving destruction in its wake. Protective fences lay shattered, young vines were broken or uprooted, and the rain-soaked earth had eroded, exposing fragile roots. The field was eerily silent, save for the howling wind sweeping through the desolate expanse. Ethan trudged through the devastated rows, his boots sinking into the muddy ground. He bent down to pick up a broken vine, his hand trembling as he held the rain-drenched stem. His expression was heavy with disappointment and helplessness. Letting the vine slip from his fingers, Ethan sank to the ground, cradling his head in his hands. His breath was ragged, burdened with the weight of loss.
"Sophia,"
he murmured, his voice raw with emotion.
"I'm not sure I can keep going. I dragged you into an impossible dream, and now, look, everything we've worked for has been destroyed in a single night."
Sophia approached, her own hands caked in mud from hours of trying to rebuild the first sections of the fence. She saw Ethan sitting there, overwhelmed, surrounded by the wreckage of their hopes. Her heart tightened, but her resolve remained unshaken. Kneeling before him, she placed her hands over his, gripping them firmly, as though to pass her warmth and conviction to him.
"Ethan,"
she said, her voice steady and warm.
"This dream isn't just yours, it's ours. I'm not afraid of failure. What I fear is giving up. We've come too far to turn back now. Let's keep going, not for anyone else, but for us."
Ethan looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers. In them, he saw not only love, but also the unyielding determination he had always admired in her.
"But Sophia,"
he said, his voice cracking.
"You've already given up so much to be here. I can't bear to see you endure any more pain."
Sophia shook her head, her lips curving into a faint smile.
"I have no regrets, Ethan. Everything I've done is because I believe in you and us. If the land can come back to life from death, so can we. I don't need anything else, just for you to stand with me. I can't do this alone."
Her words were like a flame piercing through the fog of despair that had engulfed Ethan. He glanced around the field, muddy rows, broken vines, and the storm's devastation etched into every corner. Yet amidst the ruin, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. This wasn't just a field of destruction. It was the place where their dream had begun to grow. Ethan grasped her hands tightly, his voice regaining its strength.
"Sophia, I won't let you fight this alone. We'll make it through this together, no matter what."
Sophia's smile deepened, her eyes glinting with the brilliance of sunlight breaking through the clouds.
"Then let's start here now. Our dream isn't dead, Ethan, not as long as we refuse to give up."
Hand in hand, they stood and began walking through the ruined field. Together they repaired the fences, collected the surviving vines, and worked tirelessly under the setting sun. At one point, Sophia picked up a delicate young vine and placed it in Ethan's hands. Her voice was gentle yet resolute.
"The land will believe in us if we never stop believing in it."
Her words weren't just a comfort, they were a vow. From that moment, Ethan and Sophia became more than vintners. They became warriors, fighting not just for their dream to survive, but for it to thrive. The vines, fragile yet unyielding, stood as a reflection of the couple's love and fierce determination. Against all odds, both the land and its caretakers were proving that resilience could triumph over adversity, and that even the smallest shoots could one day yield a flourishing vineyard. 2 years later, the early autumn sunrise bathed the vineyard in a warm golden light. Napa Valley was no longer a land of despair. Lush green rows of vines stretched endlessly, their plump grapes swaying gently in the breeze like precious jewels bestowed by nature. Sophia stood amidst the vineyard, the morning sun casting a honey-gold glow over her hair. In her hands, she carefully cradled a ripe cluster of grapes. The sweet aroma of the fruit filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of volcanic soil. Ethan approached, still wearing his faded work clothes, his calloused hands a testament to his relentless effort. He looked at Sophia, his eyes brimming with pride and emotion. Sophia plucked a single grape from the cluster and brought it to her lips. As the subtle sweetness touched her tongue, followed by the characteristic spiced warmth of Cabernet Sauvignon, she couldn't hold back her emotions. Tears welled up in her eyes and streamed down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of faith fulfilled, of sacrifices and hard work finally bearing fruit.
"Ethan,"
she said, her voice choked with emotion.
"we did it. This isn't just grapes, this is life."
Ethan looked at her, his eyes glistening with pride. He picked another cluster of grapes, the morning light glinting off the glistening fruit, as if nature itself was celebrating with them.
"Sophia, you were right. The land never betrays those who care for it. This isn't just a harvest, it's proof that we can overcome anything."
As they stood together in the vineyard, Ethan held up a single grape to the sunlight.
"Every grape here isn't just the product of our labor. It's every drop of sweat, every moment we refuse to give up. It's the story of these past 2 years, a story we wrote with faith and love."
Sophia nodded, her voice still full of emotion.
"I once thought what we were doing was just about survival, but now I understand. We haven't just survived. We've brought this land back to life, and we've brought ourselves back to life too."
Without enough money to hire workers or buy modern equipment, Ethan and Sophia did everything themselves. They transformed the old, weathered barn into a modest production workshop. Its gray, time-worn wooden walls, battered by wind and age, now housed their growing dream. Ethan built a large wooden table from salvaged planks he'd collected around town. Sophia arranged the repurposed tools atop it from the handmade grape crusher Ethan had crafted to the carefully repaired barrels they used for fermentation. Ethan began crushing the first clusters of grapes. The old wooden press turned slowly, squeezing the grapes into a deep ruby red juice. Droplets splattered onto his worn work shirt, but he didn't care. In that moment, he wasn't just making wine, he was bringing their dream to life. Sophia sat nearby, meticulously measuring each batch of juice and recording ratios and timings to perfect the fermentation process. Every drop of juice was an experiment, a step closer to achieving the perfect balance of flavor and emotion.
"Ethan,"
she said, gazing at the first fermenting barrel.
"this isn't just wine. This is our story, distilled into every drop."
Ethan turned to her, his eyes filled with gratitude.
"And anyone who drinks it will know we poured our hearts into it."
That evening, the barn felt more special than ever. On the old wooden table Ethan had built, the first bottles of wine were neatly lined up. The warm glow of an oil lamp illuminated the bottles, reflecting their deep crimson hues like precious gems. Each bottle wasn't just a finished product, it was a testament to their arduous journey and unyielding hope. Sophia and Ethan stood side by side, hands intertwined, silently gazing at the bottles. Words were unnecessary, the air was charged with pride, joy, and tears of happiness they struggled to contain. Sophia picked up a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon, watching the wine swirl under the light. She inhaled deeply, letting the aroma of ripe berries and the distinct earthy notes of Napa Valley fill the air. It was the scent of life, hope, and resilience. She sipped, letting the flavors unfold on her tongue, the bold spice, the subtle sweetness, the lingering finish. She closed her eyes, allowing the wine to tell their story. She could taste the scorching days under the sun, the sleepless nights hauling water, and every moment they had faltered but found the strength to carry on. When she opened her eyes, tears streamed down her cheeks.
"Ethan,"
she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion.
"we did it. This isn't just wine, it's the soul of the earth, of love, and of everything we've sacrificed."
Ethan picked up his own glass, his hand slightly shaking as he tasted the wine. The flavors washed over him, and for a moment he felt as though he might cry. Placing the glass down, he turned to Sophia, his eyes red but shining with pride.
I never thought that we could do this. Every bottle holds everything we've given, our love, our faith, and the calluses on our hands. Sophia, you were right. The land never betrays those who love it.
Ethan suddenly pulled Sophia into a tight embrace. Standing there in the small barn, the air thick with the scent of wine, their hearts swelled with the realization that every trial had been worth it. Releasing her, Ethan picked up her glass and lightly clinked it against his own.
Sophia,
he said, his voice steady.
This is just the beginning. One day, these bottles will tell our story to the world. I believe that,
she replied, her eyes glowing.
We started with nothing, but now we have everything, a dream, a vineyard, and each other.
They sat together at the table, raising their glasses in the soft light of the oil lamp. Outside, the vineyard basked in the quiet glow of moonlight, a peaceful yet vibrant image of rebirth. A gentle breeze carried the sense of earth, vines, and hope, the essence of what they had created with their whole hearts. That night, as they savored their first harvest, they understood the true meaning of their dream. It wasn't just about reviving a vineyard, it was about reviving themselves, surpassing their limits, and becoming the people they had always aspired to be. Those first bottles of wine stood as proof that, when love and faith walk hand in hand, nothing is impossible. One early winter morning, Sophia was meticulously inspecting each handcrafted bottle of wine, arranging them carefully on the shelves. Ethan entered, clutching a flyer in his hand, his face alight with excitement.
Sophia, look at this,
he exclaimed.
The town is hosting a local wine fair. We can participate.
Sophia took the flyer and skimmed through it. The fair was a small event where local winemakers displayed their products, primarily attended by farming families from the area.
Are you sure?
She asked hesitantly, her eyes clouded with worry.
I don't think our wine is good enough to show yet.
Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his gaze full of determination.
Sophia, we don't get many chances to tell our story. If our wine truly has a soul, this is the moment for people to discover it.
Sophia studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly.
All right, Ethan, let's do it. Not to win, but because our dream deserves to be heard.
On the day of the fair, Sophia and Ethan set up a modest booth with a wooden table and a few bottles of their wine. There were no flashy signs or elaborate decorations, just the wines they had poured their hearts into. The booths around them were larger and more professional, adorned with bright banners and staffed by teams of polished representatives. Their simplicity was easily overshadowed by the grandeur of their neighbors. Passers-by cast indifferent glances at their booth. A few stopped to taste the wine but left quickly, some offering dismissive remarks.
It's all right, nothing special,
one person said. Sophia clenched her hands tightly, her heart sinking at the casual critiques. But when she glanced at Ethan, still smiling calmly, her resolve softened.
They don't have to like it right away,
Ethan said quietly.
We just need one person to believe.
That afternoon, a middle-aged man stopped at their booth. He wore a simple suit, his demeanor calm but commanding, his sharp eyes seeming to see through everything. Sophia greeted him politely, offering him a taste of their wine.
We have Cabernet Sauvignon and Zinfandel, both handcrafted from grapes grown on volcanic soil.
The man, Walter King, a renowned wine critic in California, though neither Sophia nor Ethan recognized him, picked up a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. He swirled the deep ruby liquid, studying its color. As the aroma reached him, his brows furrowed not with displeasure, but with intrigue.
Bold, but there's something raw about it,
he murmured before taking a sip. Sophia and Ethan held their breaths, watching his expression intently. After a long pause, Walter set the glass down and turned to them, his eyes filled with genuine admiration.
This wine isn't perfect. It's still rough around the edges, but I must admit, it has a soul. You're telling a very unique story through your wine.
Sophia could hardly believe her ears. His words were like a flame, melting away all her exhaustion and doubts. Ethan, though trying to remain composed, couldn't hide the joy sparkling in his eyes. A few days later, Walter King's review appeared in the local newspaper. Sophia read it aloud, her voice trembling with emotion.
Their wine is unpolished, but it carries the soul of the land. This is not just a product. It's a dream distilled from hardship and perseverance. If there's one thing to note, it's this: keep an eye on these wines. They are the promise of a bright future.
When she finished, Sophia folded the paper, tears streaming down her cheeks. She handed it to Ethan, who read it in silence before looking at her with a beaming smile.
Sophia, we did it. This isn't just a review. It's proof that our dream is alive and it's starting to spread.
Sophia threw her arms around Ethan, and they held each other tightly. No words were needed. Knowing that someone had seen, understood, and validated their efforts was enough to soothe every hardship they had endured. Yet, while Walter King's review seemed like the perfect start to a new chapter for Sophia and Ethan, they didn't realize that the spotlight of their small success was also casting shadows. Lucas Chambers, the man Sophia had rejected, could not stand the idea of her finding happiness and success with someone he had always looked down on for his humble origins. In Lucas's mind, revenge began to take root, dark and twisted like a poisonous vine creeping into fertile soil. As Sophia and Ethan immersed themselves in plans for an even brighter future, they remained unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon, a storm that threatened to destroy everything they had built. Would Lucas's envy be enough to unravel a dream founded on love, sacrifice, and unwavering faith? And if it did, what justice would the hands of fate deliver to a man consumed by hatred? The answers lay in a series of challenges yet to unfold. Lucas Chambers sat in his expansive office, the room a testament to the Chambers family's legacy of power and prestige. Oil portraits of his ancestors lined the walls, silent reminders that Lucas was the heir to a dynasty that could not afford failure. The gleaming mahogany desk in front of him was piled with business documents, but at the very top was Walter King's article. The headline cut through Lucas's pride like a blade.
The soul of the land in every drop of wine. Ethan Walker and Sophia Bennett achieved the impossible in Napa Valley.
Lucas leaned over the article, the desk lamp casting a harsh light on his face. The words praising Sophia and Ethan felt like barbs digging into his ego. He slammed the paper onto the desk, stood abruptly, and began pacing the room. Each step echoed through the quiet space, a steady drumbeat of his growing fury. Sophia's face flashed in his mind, the memory of her at the Chambers family dinner, standing tall as she delivered her rejection in front of everyone.
I can't marry Lucas. I love Ethan, the man who shares my dreams.
The words reverberated in his head like a sentence handed down in court. Lucas remembered her gaze, fearless, unwavering. It wasn't just a refusal, it was a declaration that he was unworthy of her. And Ethan? Ethan Walker, a nobody, chosen over him? To Lucas, it wasn't just a personal insult, it was an affront to the Chambers family's name and legacy. Lucas stopped in front of the large window, staring out at the family vineyard. Rows of lush green vines stretched toward the horizon, proud and thriving, a symbol of the dynasty his family had cultivated for generations.
A man like Ethan has no right to compete with me?
He muttered, his voice low and venomous.
Let alone overshadow the Chambers name. And Sophia, she dared to humiliate me. No one does that without paying the price.
He walked over to the large liquor cabinet in the corner of the room. Pulling out an aged bottle of whiskey, he poured himself a glass, his grip tightening on the glass until his knuckles turned white. He took a deep drink, the burn in his throat doing little to quench the fire inside him. Turning back to the desk, his eyes locked onto the article again.
They think they can surpass me? Ethan thinks he can step into my world. No, I won't let that happen. If they want a dream, I'll turn it into a nightmare.
Lucas sat down and pulled a business card from the drawer. It was the contact information for a group of underground operatives, men he had heard about through shady connections in the industry.
This won't just be about destruction.
Lucas muttered, his voice icy.
I want them to be unable to rise again. I want everything land, wine dreams, reduced to ash.
He placed the glass down with deliberate care, his eyes filled with cold resolve. Lucas wasn't merely seeking to ruin Sophia and Ethan, he wanted to strip them of all hope, to force them to kneel before the might of the Chamber's name. The storm was no longer brewing, it was here, and Lucas Chambers was ready to unleash its full fury. Fueled by jealousy and rage, Lucas set his plan into motion with cold precision. Every step was calculated, not just to destroy Sophia and Ethan's vineyard, but to strip them of any hope of rebuilding.
They dare to compete with me. I'll erase every trace of them,
he hissed. Lucas dialed the number from the card, his voice icily commanding.
I have a job for you. Make it clean. I want them left with nothing but ashes.
Thus began not just the ruin of Sophia and Ethan's dream, but the seeds of Lucas's own undoing, a stark reminder that karma spares no one. In his opulent office, Lucas crafted his scheme with ruthless focus. His once tidy desk was now strewn with maps, aerial photos of Sophia and Ethan's land, and irrigation system diagrams. Seated at the center of the chaos, his eyes scrutinized every detail like a predator stalking its prey. For Lucas, this wasn't merely personal vengeance, it was a comprehensive campaign to obliterate their future.
I don't just want to destroy what they have. I want to eliminate any chance they have to rise again. They'll learn that challenging the Chambers family is an unforgivable mistake.
Lucas didn't trust amateurs for this job. He contacted a covert sabotage group, professionals known for their underhanded work in the wine industry. They specialized in everything from poisoning vines and sabotaging harvests to exerting pressure on rival producers. They met in a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of town. The flickering neon light illuminated Lucas's steely face and the scarred, hardened men sitting across from him.
I don't need you to be clever,
Lucas said coldly.
I need you to be thorough.
One of the men smirked, his voice dripping with danger.
The Chamber's name carries weight. Pay us enough, and we'll make sure everything burns to the ground.
Lucas placed a leather briefcase on the table and opened it, revealing stacks of cash. The saboteur's eyes gleamed with greed, but Lucas wasn't finished. He handed over a detailed dossier, photos, diagrams, and precise instructions. That night, Napa Valley lay unusually quiet. Clouds obscured the moon, and a chilling breeze swept through the vineyards. Sophia and Ethan's field was shrouded in darkness, save for the faint glow of lights from their small barn. In the stillness, 4 shadowy figures slipped through the northern fence. Dressed in black and with faces concealed, they moved with practiced silence. Each carried tools of destruction: knives, hammers, cans of gasoline, and syringes filled with toxic chemicals. They started at the water pump, the lifeline of the vineyard. One man crouched and sliced through the main pipes with a sharp blade. Water gushed out, forming a small stream that quickly disappeared into the soil. The quiet gurgle of flowing water echoed in the night, unnoticed by anyone.
Make sure it's beyond repair,
one of them ordered, his voice a cold whisper. They moved to the water tanks, smashing valves and denting the metal until the tanks were unusable. The sound of shattering steel rang out briefly before silence fell again.
This part's done. Move on to the next phase,
another said, his eyes glinting with malice. The saboteurs turned to the vineyard itself. The young vines with their tender green shoots were the fruits of months of back-breaking labor, a symbol of hope for Sophia and Ethan's future. That future was about to be stolen. One man pulled out syringes filled with toxic chemicals. He crouched by the base of each vine, carefully injecting poison into the soil. Each puncture felt like the destruction of a dream.
Make it subtle. They shouldn't realize until it's too late,
he said, a sinister grin spreading across his face. They moved methodically from row to row, leaving no vine untouched. Under the beam of their flashlights, The chemical droplets shimmered a silent symbol of creeping annihilation. When the field was thoroughly sabotaged, the group turned their attention to the small winery. The modest structure, filled with Sophia and Ethan's hopes and dreams, stood solitary in the vast landscape. One of the saboteurs poured gasoline over the wooden floor, barrels, and fermentation equipment. The acrid smell of fuel filled the air, blending with the faint scent of the barn's timber.
Make sure nothing survives. We'll finish it all here,
the leader commanded. He struck a match, the small flame flickering in the dark before he tossed it onto the gasoline-soaked floor. Flames erupted instantly, racing across the room and engulfing everything in fiery destruction. The barrels of fermenting wine exploded one by one, sending sharp cracks into the night. The fire climbed higher, casting a fiery glow against the black sky, not the glow of hope, but of utter devastation. As the inferno raged, the saboteurs retreated into the shadows, leaving the vineyard to burn. The once quiet night was now filled with the crackling roar of flames consuming dreams, reducing them to ash. Mrs. Margaret, an elderly resident of Napa Valley, often took evening walks to savor the tranquility of the countryside. She loved the whisper of the wind through the trees and the glittering stars above. But tonight that peace was shattered. From her perch atop a hill, she noticed a strange light rising from the direction of Sophia and Ethan's winery. At first, she assumed it was their usual late-night work. But as the glow intensified into a fierce orange blaze, her heart clenched in alarm.
Fire? Sophia and Ethan's winery is on fire,
she screamed, her voice echoing into the stillness. She turned and hurried down the hill, her bare feet crunching over twigs and dry grass. Age made each step a struggle, but she pressed on, her pounding heart urging her forward. Margaret knew she had to sound the alarm and call for help. In the nearby town, her cries pierced the quiet streets, waking her neighbors. Lights flickered on, windows opened, and curious faces peered out.
There's a fire at Sophia and Ethan's winery,
Margaret shouted.
Whoever can help, come now.
Some rushed to grab buckets of water, while others grabbed flashlights and shovels. The small community, which had once doubted Sophia and Ethan's dreams, now rallied together. They couldn't stand by and watch everything be unjustly taken from them. As the crowd approached the winery, the flames raged, casting a sinister glow over the group. The crackling fire consumed everything in its path, illuminating their faces a mix of shock, anger, and determination. A voice rang out above the chaos.
Someone's running. That's not Sophia or Ethan.
Dark silhouettes darted through the trees, trying to escape unseen. But one of the saboteurs, unfamiliar with the terrain, stumbled and fell, rolling to the ground. He was quickly surrounded by beams of flashlights and the stern faces of townsfolk who knew every inch of the land.
Who sent you?
Barked a middle-aged man, his voice taut with fury. Pinned to the ground, the saboteur thrashed but couldn't break free from the tightening circle of enraged locals.
I don't know anything. I was just following orders,
he cried.
Whose orders?
Demanded another voice, cold and sharp. Under the mounting pressure, the man finally broke.
Lucas Chambers. He hired us to do this. He wanted everything destroyed.
The name struck like lightning across the group. Their anger, once directed at the saboteurs, now turned toward the true mastermind behind the destruction. The fire was eventually brought under control, but the damage was done. The winery was reduced to smoldering rubble. The barrels of fermenting wine, the handcrafted equipment, everything Ethan and Sophia had painstakingly built was gone. Outside, the vineyard fared no better. The young vines, vibrant and full of promise, had been poisoned. Their leaves wilted yellow, their roots dying silently beneath the soil. The acrid smell of chemicals lingered in the air, mixing with the choking scent of burnt wood and ash. The townsfolk stood in silence, staring at the devastation. There were no words to capture the loss.
What did they do to deserve this?
One woman whispered, her voice breaking.
Ethan and Sophia only wanted to bring something good to this land. Lucas Chambers?
Another man said, his voice heavy with disdain.
He didn't just destroy their property, he attacked the very hope this community had left.
As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the crowd remained, their spirits weighed down by grief and anger. Yet amidst the ashes, a question hung in the air: would justice find its way to those who had wronged Sophia and Ethan? And if so, how would it come? When Sophia and Ethan arrived, the flames from the winery still flickered against the night sky. They froze at the edge of the field, unable to comprehend the devastation before them. Their winery, the heart of their dream, the vessel for their every drop of sweat and hope, was now a charred skeleton of iron and ash. Sophia fell to her knees, the hard ground biting into her skin. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the ruins. The wind carried the acrid scent of burnt wood and scorched wine, each breath stabbing at her chest like a dagger. Ethan stood beside her, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His eyes, red and raw, brimmed with tears, not from the smoke, but from the overwhelming pain of seeing everything they'd built reduced to ashes. This wasn't just a loss of property, it was the collapse of everything they had fought for. Finally, Sophia broke down, her sobs cutting through the stillness of the night. She buried her face in her hands, her tears mixing with the dirt smudged on her cheeks.
Ethan, we've lost everything,
she choked out.
Everything we've worked for. Every drop of sweat, every ounce of hope. It's all gone.
Ethan knelt beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. He wanted to comfort her, to find the words to ease her pain, but he couldn't. He was crumbling under the weight of his own despair. He stared at the dwindling flames, feeling as though they were devouring his heart, along with the remnants of the winery. After a long silence, he finally spoke, his voice low and heavy with anguish.
Sophia, I can't believe someone could be this cruel. Who would do this? Who could destroy not just our dream, but this land?
As the fire's embers dimmed, Sophia and Ethan walked into the vineyard, their footsteps heavy with grief. Sophia knelt beside a vine whose roots had been poisoned. Its leaves had turned yellow, its stem limp, as though its life had been drained. She picked up a brittle branch, her hands trembling. This wasn't just a vine, it was a symbol of the hope they had nurtured. And now, it had been stolen from them in an act of senseless malice. Ethan found the severed water pipes and shattered tanks. He knelt beside the broken pieces, running his fingers over the jagged edges. The ground beneath him was dry, the last traces of water already absorbed by the earth.
They planned this,
he muttered, his voice trembling.
Every detail, every step was calculated to bring us down.
His words carried not just sorrow, but a growing anger that burned hotter than the fire that had destroyed their winery. Sophia rose to her feet and turned to him, her eyes still glistening with tears, but now shining with determination.
We need to find out who did this, and we need to make sure they can never do this to anyone else.
As the fire died, their neighbors gathered around them, standing silently among the wreckage. Though they hadn't always supported Sophia and Ethan's dream, in this moment, they shared the weight of the injustice that had been done. An elderly woman stepped forward and placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder.
We're with you. This wasn't just your winery, it was a part of this land's future. And whoever did this will pay for what they've done.
Sophia looked at her, her gratitude mingling with the overwhelming grief that still gripped her.
Thank you. But this is too much. How can we possibly rise again from this?
When dawn broke, Sophia and Ethan were still standing amidst the rubble, hand in hand. The light of the rising sun illuminated the devastation, but it also revealed the outlines of resilience etched into their faces. Ethan tightened his grip on her hand, his voice steady and resolute.
They can burn everything, but they can't destroy our dream. I promised you, Sophia, and I won't let anyone take that promise away.
Sophia turned to him, her tear-streaked face now glowing with determination.
We'll start again, Ethan, not just for us, but for this land, and for everyone who believes in what we're trying to build.
Standing together amidst the ruins, they weren't just mourning what they had lost. They were preparing for the fight to reclaim it. Eleanor Bennett sat in her stately office, surrounded by the opulent trappings of power and legacy. The walls were lined with shelves overflowing with books, but the quiet dignity of the room could not soothe the storm brewing in her heart. Before her lay a dossier, compiled by the investigator she had discreetly hired to follow Sophia's situation. The file contained detailed reports of the sabotage testimonies from the captured saboteur, photos of the scorched winery, the poisoned fields, and the mangled irrigation system. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned each page, her eyes reflecting pain and fury. She could see it clearly in her mind, Sophia, standing amid the ruins, her eyes brimming with tears, her face etched with despair. The thought of her daughter so broken pierced Eleanor's heart like 1,000 sharp knives.
Sophia gave up everything to live her dream. How dare they destroy it?
She whispered, her voice low but laced with determination. Eleanor stood, stepping away from her plush armchair to her polished mahogany desk. The lamplight cast shadows on her face, no longer soft and maternal but resolute and unyielding, a mother transformed into a protector willing to wield her power to its fullest extent. She picked up her phone and began a series of calls, her contacts a who's who of influential figures, journalists, lawyers, and regional politicians.
I have evidence of a deliberate sabotage in Napa Valley. It implicates Lucas Chambers directly. Yes, I'll provide everything.
Next, she called her personal attorney.
Prepare a lawsuit against Lucas Chambers. I want him prosecuted for every single offense. Leave no loophole.
Her tone left no room for hesitation. This was not just a mother's act of love. It was a declaration of the Bennett family's power, a clear message that no one could destroy what was theirs without facing consequences. Richard Bennett had remained silent at first, his pride wounded by Sophia's decision to abandon the life he had planned for her. But as he flipped through the images of poisoned vines, destroyed barrels, and the anguish on his daughter's face, a deep ache began to replace his anger. That evening, he stood before the portrait of his ancestors in the grand drawing room. The chandelier's light reflected off the painting's gilded frame, casting the faces of the family founders in a solemn glow. Their silent gaze seemed to challenge him.
Will you allow the Bennett name to be tarnished by Lucas Chambers' actions?
Richard turned decisively, his expression hardening. He entered Eleanor's office, where she was reviewing the evidence and plans for legal action.
Eleanor,
he said, his voice steady yet resolute.
You don't have to do this alone. Lucas didn't just harm our daughter. He attacked the honor of the Bennett family. That cannot stand.
Eleanor looked up, surprised for a moment, but her expression softened as understanding dawned. In that instant, she saw the man she had married not just a hardened businessman, but a father willing to do whatever it took to protect his child. Within days, the story of the sabotage made headlines. Photos of the burned winery, dead vines, and the saboteur's confession captured the attention of the media. Headlines blared across major outlets.
The California wine industry shaken, Lucas Chambers accused of sabotage. The Chambers family faces the biggest scandal in their history.
The articles painted Lucas as a vindictive and reckless figure, willing to destroy competitors for personal gain. The fallout was swift. Investors began withdrawing from the Chambers family business. Distributors and retailers suspended their contracts, and customers boycotted their products. The once proud Chambers name, synonymous with prestige and quality, became a symbol of disgrace. Eleanor and Richard watched the unfolding drama from their home. Eleanor, sitting gracefully in her office, took no pleasure in the destruction of the Chambers empire. Her focus remained on one goal: justice for Sophia and Ethan.
This is only the beginning,
she said softly, looking out the window at the vineyard beyond.
They took our daughter's dreams, and now they'll face the consequences.
Richard nodded, his voice steady as he replied,
And we'll make sure they never have the chance to do it again.
Lucas Chambers faced trial for 3 severe charges: property destruction, crop poisoning, and intentional arson. The courtroom buzzed with media attention and the presence of key figures in the wine industry. The prosecution presented irrefutable evidence against Lucas' security footage capturing the hired saboteurs in action. Testimonies from captured saboteurs, naming Lucas as the mastermind. Bank records tracing payments from Lucas's hidden accounts to the saboteurs. Once a man of great pride and influence, Lucas now sat slumped in the defendant's chair, his head bowed. The arrogance that once defined him had evaporated, replaced by the stark reality of guilt and the weight of his impending punishment. The court sentenced Lucas to 15 years in prison and ordered him to pay substantial reparations to Sophia and Ethan for the damages caused. The verdict not only stripped Lucas of his freedom but also signaled the downfall of the Chambers family legacy. Business partners severed ties. The family's vineyards were seized by creditors. The name,
Chambers,
once synonymous with power and prestige in Napa Valley, faded into obscurity. In his prison cell, Lucas sat alone, the light from a small window casting shadows on his haggard face. Memories of his once glorious life haunted him.
It was my selfishness and envy that destroyed everything,
he murmured, his voice a hollow echo in the empty cell. Meanwhile, beneath Napa Valley's gray skies, Sophia and Ethan stood hand in hand amid the desolation of their ruined vineyard. The once vibrant green had turned to ash, but within their hearts, a new seed of hope began to sprout. They didn't know how arduous the road ahead would be, but they were certain of one thing: from this devastation, they would rise again stronger, like a phoenix from the ashes. Together, they envisioned creating a new wine, one that would encapsulate not only the essence of the land but also the story of their resilience and unwavering hope. They would call it Phoenix Blend, a testament to a dream that refused to die.
When it seems all is lost, can Sophia and Ethan rebuild from the ashes? Subscribe now to follow their inspiring journey of rebirth.
Sophia and Ethan stood in the early spring morning, the chill of the air clinging to their breaths. A thin mist wove through the barren vineyard, draping the skeletal vines that lay silent witnesses to their pain. The factory, once the heartbeat of their dream, now stood as a charred skeleton, its blackened frame jutting out against the soft hues of dawn. Sophia tightened the shawl around her shoulders, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon where the first light of the day crept in. Beside her, Ethan bent down and picked up a broken vine branch, its brittle fragility a reflection of his heavy heart.
Sophia,
he murmured, his voice laden with uncertainty.
Do you think we can start over? Or is this just my stubbornness making everything worse?
Sophia didn't answer right away. She let the scene before her sink in the evidence of destruction, the overwhelming reality of their loss. Yet, instead of letting it crush her spirit, she chose to focus on what remained: the land beneath her feet, the people who mattered, and the quiet promise of life waiting to be renewed.
Ethan,
she finally replied, her voice steady.
What was destroyed wasn't the dream. We're still here. As long as we stand on this land, that dream is still alive.
At that moment, the faint rumble of wheels on gravel and a chorus of voices broke the quiet. They turned toward the sound, and what they saw took their breath away. The local townspeople were arriving in numbers, carrying shovels, hoes, and sacks of fertilizer. The faces of those who had once dismissed or doubted them now glowed with purpose under the rising sun. Their arrival was an unspoken declaration they had come to help. Leading the group was an older farmer, his weathered face a testament to years spent working the land. He had once scoffed at Ethan's dreams, calling him unrealistic. Yet now, he approached with humility.
Ethan, Sophia,
the man began, his voice rough but earnest.
We've seen what you've done and what you've lost. We were wrong not to believe in you. But now we want to make it right. We want to help you rebuild.
Sophia was rendered speechless. She scanned the faces of those around her, each gaze sincere, each hand extended in solidarity. A warmth spread through her chest, melting the cold despair that had clung to her since the fire. Ethan stepped forward, clasping the older man's hand tightly. His eyes glistened, but his voice carried the strength of his resolve.
Thank you, all of you. Not just for us, but for this land. This isn't just our dream. It's a dream for the entire community.
His words rang out like a rallying cry. From that moment, the vineyard became a hive of activity. Together, they cleared the dead vines, tilled the soil, and prepared to plant new roots. One afternoon, as the group worked tirelessly under the warm sun, a car pulled up at the vineyard's edge. From it stepped Walter King, holding a large envelope in his hand. Sophia and Ethan, dirt-streaked and tired, walked over to greet him.
Walter!
Sophia exclaimed, her smile bright despite the fatigue on her face.
We didn't expect to see you here.
Walter handed her the envelope, his expression one of encouragement.
I've been following your progress,
he said, his tone warm.
Your story has spread further than you realize. This,
he gestured to the envelope,
comes from a group of investors who read my article about your wine. They want to support you in rebuilding from the ground up.
Sophia opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter outlining offers of financial backing and partnership. Ethan leaned over to read it with her, his expression shifting from astonishment to cautious consideration.
Sophia,
he said slowly, his voice tinged with doubt.
Do you think we should accept this? After everything, can we trust anyone else with our dream?
Sophia placed her hand on his, her gaze soft yet unwavering.
Ethan, we've never been alone in this dream. If they share our vision, they're not just investors, they're partners. Let's allow them to help us take this dream further than we ever imagined.
With the support of the community and the new partnership, Sophia and Ethan began not just to rebuild but to reimagine their vineyard. Together, they planted fresh vines and expanded their small winery. Their journey was no longer just about survival, it was about creating something enduring, something that would inspire everyone who heard their story. From the ashes of destruction, the seeds of rebirth had taken root, nurtured by the love, hope, and unwavering belief of a community that had come together to make the impossible possible. Starting over was never meant to be easy, and for Sophia and Ethan, the challenges this time were even more daunting than before. The land was depleted, the soil dry and lifeless, and the withered vines stretched across the field like haunting reminders of failure. Each day began at dawn. Sophia rose before the sun, laced up her worn work gloves, and began the grueling task of pulling out dead vines. Their roots clung stubbornly to the rocky soil, as if resisting departure. She strained with every pull, her sweat glistening on her brow, her hands raw and burning. Meanwhile, Ethan busied himself with repairing the irrigation system. He tightened every connection, replaced broken pipes, and meticulously checked for leaks. Each twist of the wrench, every patch he applied, was a silent vow to the land, a promise that he would not abandon it, no matter how unforgiving it seemed. When night fell, they sat on old wooden crates, backs pressed against each other under the dim glow of a single bulb in the barn. The long days left their hands calloused and their bodies aching, but in their eyes shone a faint yet enduring hope. One evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, Sophia found Ethan sitting motionless among the newly planted vines. His head hung low, hands clasped over his knees, his gaze fixed on the earth beneath him, as if seeking answers in its silence. Sophia approached quietly and settled beside him.
Ethan,
she asked gently, her voice filled with concern.
What's wrong?
Ethan lifted his head, his exhaustion etched deeply into his features. He gestured toward one of the young vines, its leaves wilting despite his careful watering.
Sophia,
he sighed.
I'm not sure these vines will survive. I've done everything I can, but it feels like the land has nothing left to give. And what if we fail again? I can't bear the thought of dragging you into an impossible dream.
Sophia stayed silent for a moment, studying his face, the face of a man carrying the weight of their shared dream, a man haunted by the fear of letting her down. She placed a hand on his shoulder and then took his hand in hers, pressing it against her chest.
Ethan,
she said softly.
Do you feel this? It's my heartbeat, our heartbeat. These vines will grow, not because they're strong, but because they have us. They have the love and determination we've poured into this land.
Ethan stared at her for a long moment. In her eyes, he saw not just hope, but the unshakable strength he had leaned on so many times before. He took a deep breath, nodding as resolve returned to his voice.
You're right, Sophia. We've overcome worse than this before, and we'll do it again.
One weekend evening, as the valley bathed in the crimson hues of sunset, Sophia and Ethan sat on an old wooden bench amidst the rows of newly planted vines. The fresh greenery stretched into the horizon, glistening under the fading light. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply listened to the wind rustling through the nascent leaves and the soft chirping of birds in the nearby trees. Sophia smiled faintly and leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder.
Ethan,
she murmured.
Do you think what we're doing will ever be remembered?
Ethan gazed into the distance, his eyes steady and filled with quiet determination.
Sophia,
he said.
Hey, I don't know if we'll ever create something grand, but I do know one thing. We won't let this dream die. And if someday someone looks at what we've done and feels inspired, then that will be enough.
Sophia turned to face him, her eyes shimmering in the twilight.
Ethan, I don't just want to make wine. I want to tell a story that each drop of wine will carry, a story of rebirth, of resilience, and of the love we've given to this land.
Ethan clasped her hand firmly, his voice warm and resolute.
We'll do that, Sophia. Not just wine, but a symbol, something the world can look to and know that even from ashes, dreams can rise stronger than ever before.
The story of Sophia and Ethan had transcended their personal journey. It became the story of a community united by a shared belief in rebirth and the power of perseverance. Every action of support from the locals, once skeptical, now steadfast, was a testament to the enduring power of human connection. The vineyard was no longer just a plot of land, it was a beacon of hope, a reminder that no dream worth chasing could ever be achieved alone. As the first shoots of new vines broke through the soil, they carried with them more than just the promise of wine. They bore the weight of countless hands that had nurtured them and the countless dreams that had given them life. Sophia and Ethan knew their journey was far from over, but from the scorched earth and relentless challenges, they had already created something extraordinary, a foundation stronger than the fire that sought to destroy them. And in every bottle of Phoenix blend, the world would taste not just the wine, but the story of hope, love, and the courage to begin anew. After months of relentless work, countless setbacks, and sleepless nights, Ethan and Sophia stood on the precipice of the dream they had fought so hard to achieve. From the reborn vineyards nurtured by their tireless hands to the unwavering support of their community, two exquisite wines had finally emerged: Phoenix Blend and Heritage Reserve. In the modestly rebuilt winery, the late afternoon sunlight streamed through large glass windows, casting a warm glow on the neatly arranged bottles. Each one bore a handcrafted label, the Phoenix on Phoenix Blend radiating vitality, while the elegant script of Heritage Reserve shimmered under the golden light. Ethan and Sophia stepped into the room, their breath hitching at the sight before them. Rows of completed bottles gleamed with promise, each a testament to their resilience and shared vision. Sophia approached a bottle of Phoenix Blend, her fingertips lightly tracing the Phoenix design. Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of fulfillment.
Ethan,
she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion.
We've truly done it. This isn't just wine, it's our dream, alive and thriving.
Ethan came up beside her, his gaze glowing with the same awe as when they had first dared to dream this together. He picked up a bottle, cradling it as if holding a piece of his soul.
"Sophia, do you see it?"
he asked, his voice thick with emotion.
"This is everything we've endured, distilled into every drop of this wine. It carries our story, our pain, our hope, and our love."
Neither of them could hold back the tide of emotions. Sophia turned and threw her arms around Ethan, tears flowing freely as she clung to him. Ethan wrapped his arms tightly around her, resting his head on her shoulder, both of them enveloped in a quiet, overwhelming joy.
"Thank you,"
Ethan murmured, his voice breaking.
"Thank you for believing in me, for never leaving, even when everything was falling apart."
Sophia pulled back just enough to meet his gaze, her eyes shimmering.
"Ethan, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have had the strength to keep going. We made it not because we were lucky, but because we never gave up."
Ethan smiled, nodding.
"And we won't stop now. These bottles will tell our story to the world."
That evening, Sophia and Ethan hosted a small celebration for everyone who had stood by them. The table was set amidst rows of lush green vines, with the golden hues of the setting sun casting an ethereal glow over the gathering. Sophia rose from her seat, holding a glass of Phoenix Blend high. Her gaze swept over the faces of their friends and supporters, each one a vital piece of their journey.
"This isn't just Ethan's and my achievement,"
she began, her voice steady yet full of emotion.
"This is the result of all of us. Thank you for believing in us, for standing by us when everything seemed lost. These bottles, these wines are stories of love, perseverance, and the strength of community."
Applause erupted, echoing across the serene landscape. Laughter and cheers filled the air as glasses clinked in celebration. Ethan added, his deep voice carrying the weight of their gratitude.
"Let Phoenix Blend and Heritage Reserve stand as symbols, not just of what we've accomplished, but of anyone who has ever dared to dream and fought to make that dream a reality."
In that moment, Sophia and Ethan didn't just revel in their success. They felt the profound significance of their journey. Their triumph was more than material, it was about connection, trust, and the invaluable lessons learned through adversity. They knew that from this point on, every bottle they crafted would carry more than flavor, it would tell a vivid story. A story of rebirth, of hope rekindled, and of an unwavering love for Napa Valley, a love so strong it could rise from ashes like the phoenix itself. The first bottles of Phoenix Blend and Heritage Reserve were more than just products, they were living testaments to the dream Sophia and Ethan had fought to bring to life. Every drop of wine told their story, a journey etched in resilience, love, and unwavering determination. With the steadfast support of their community and the faith of new investors, these wines began to carve their path into the world. From local tastings to regional competitions, their bottles carried more than exquisite flavor, they carried the spirit of rebirth. The journey from ashes to a symbol of hope and renewal marked the start of a new chapter in Sophia and Ethan's story. It was a chapter where their dream wasn't just preserved but blossomed, spreading its wings far beyond what they had ever imagined. Sophia and Ethan stepped out of the taxi onto the bustling avenue in the heart of Paris, where the International Wine Exhibition was taking place. Towering above them was a grand building, its gleaming chandeliers shining through tall glass windows, a dazzling invitation into the world of elite winemaking. Ethan squeezed Sophia's hand gently, as if to steady himself. For a moment, memories of charred barrels, scorched fields, and shattered dreams flashed through his mind. But when he looked into Sophia's eyes, glimmering with pride and resolve, he remembered why they were here, not just to seek recognition, but to share their story. Inside the sprawling exhibition hall, the air buzzed with energy. Renowned wine brands showcased their collections in meticulously crafted displays, their bottles gleaming like jewels. Critics, producers, and distributors mingled, their conversations blending with the clinking of glasses. At the center of the hall stood the display for Phoenix Blend and Heritage Reserve, tastefully understated yet striking. The Phoenix Blend bottle, emblazoned with a phoenix rising from ashes, caught the soft golden light, while the Heritage Reserve exuded elegance with its embossed Napa Valley motif. Sophia paused before their display, letting the weight of the moment settle over her.
"We've come so far, Ethan,"
she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Curiosity rippled through the crowd. Attendees began gathering around their display, lifting the bottles for a closer look. A distinguished French critic, silver-haired and impeccably dressed, swirled a glass of Phoenix Blend and sipped it. His eyebrows knit briefly as he closed his eyes, savoring the layers of flavor. When he opened them, his gaze was filled with astonishment.
"This is unlike any wine I've ever tasted,"
he announced to the growing audience.
"Bold, complex, yet impeccably balanced. It tells a story with every sip."
Across the room, Heritage Reserve drew the attention of veteran winemakers from Bordeaux. A stern-faced judge, known for his discerning palate, tasted the wine and spoke with reverence.
"This is a symphony in a glass. Sweetness that doesn't overpower, elegance that doesn't falter. It captures the soul of Napa Valley while offering something refreshingly unique."
As the evening progressed, excitement grew. By the time the awards ceremony commenced, the hall was abuzz with whispers of Phoenix Blend and Heritage Reserve. Sophia and Ethan sat in the front row, their hands clasped tightly. When their names were called, they rose in unison, the applause resonating like thunder around them. Phoenix Blend was awarded,
"Breakthrough Wine of the Year,"
with the jury declaring,
"Phoenix Blend is a symbol of resilience and renewal. It is not merely a product. It is a testament to overcoming adversity and triumphing through faith."
Heritage Reserve received the award for
Best Traditional Wine,
accompanied by the accolade,
"This wine honors Napa Valley's history while weaving past and future into a seamless sensory experience."
Sophia ascended the stage, her hands trembling as she accepted the gleaming trophy. Looking out at the sea of faces, her gaze found Ethan, his smile radiant with pride. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow.
"What you see here today is the result of belief, perseverance, and love for our land,"
Sophia said, her voice steady despite her emotions.
"This isn't just our success. This is the success of everyone who believed in this dream."
The hall erupted in applause once more, and from that moment, Phoenix Blend and Heritage Reserve became household names in the wine world. Distributors from Europe, North America, and Asia approached them, eager to bring their wines to luxury restaurants, five-star hotels, and prestigious markets around the globe. A leading wine magazine soon featured them in a glowing article.
Napa Valley now boasts not only its storied heritage but also Phoenix Blend, a beacon of rebirth, and Heritage Reserve, a celebration of timeless excellence. Sophia and Ethan have inscribed their names into the annals of winemaking history.
That night, back at their hotel, Sophia and Ethan sat by the window overlooking the glittering sign. The distant hum of Parisian life filled the air as Ethan took Sophia's hand in his.
"We did it, Sophia,"
he said, his voice warm with gratitude.
"But the best part isn't the awards. It's knowing that our story has found its way into the hearts of so many."
Sophia smiled, her eyes shimmering with hope.
"And I believe,"
she replied softly,
"that our story is only just beginning."
Sophia and Ethan sat under the shade of a grand oak tree by the lush green vineyard. The late afternoon sunlight bathed the newly planted vines in a golden glow. Yet, instead of focusing solely on their own success, their thoughts turned to a bigger question.
"Ethan,"
Sophia said, her gaze fixed on the horizon,
"we've received so much help from the community to get to where we are today. But what about the people around us? The farmers struggling to hold on to their land. Do they have the same opportunities we did?"
Ethan was silent for a moment before nodding, his voice reflective.
Sophia, I was once one of them. I know the fear of losing your land, of failed harvests. If we can help them, then our dream won't just belong to the two of us. It will become the dream of all of Napa Valley.
The two exchanged a glance, a quiet determination growing in their eyes. They knew that the journey of renewal couldn't stop with them, they had to share it, transforming this land into a place where every dream could take root. Sophia and Ethan began hosting workshops right at their winery. The grand celebrations were replaced with earnest yet intimate meetings where they invited agricultural experts and seasoned winemakers to share their knowledge with local farmers. During one workshop, Ethan stood in the middle of the crowd, holding a young vine branch as he explained.
Each vine is like a child. It needs the right care to grow strong. Soil, water, sunlight, all must be in harmony.
An elderly farmer, his face weathered by time and sun, raised a question.
Ethan, I've been growing grapes my whole life, but this is the first time I've heard about organic soil restoration. Does this really work?
Ethan smiled, his gaze steady and full of conviction.
I'm not just here to teach. I'll work alongside you. Together we'll prove that this land has more potential than we ever imagined.
It wasn't just theory. Ethan went to small farms, bringing high-quality grape varieties and modern irrigation systems that he and Sophia personally invested in. He spent hours with older farmers, helping them repair outdated water systems and revitalize exhausted fields. Sophia was equally tireless in inspiring others. She stood among a group of young farmers, explaining how they could leverage traditional winemaking methods to create higher-value products.
Every drop of your wine can tell the story of this land. Don't just think about profit. Think about turning your wine into a symbol of faith and the unity of Napa Valley.
Sophia proposed creating a wine cooperative where farmers could contribute grapes and participate in a centralized production process. They named the collective wine line
Unity Blend.
A harmony of different lands, different dreams, but with one shared purpose. At the launch of Unity Blend, Sophia addressed the gathered crowd.
Unity Blend is not just a wine, it's a testament to the strength of a community. When we stand together, nothing is impossible.
The flavor of Unity Blend, subtly sweet yet complex, quickly won the admiration of even the most discerning critics. A young farmer, who had once considered selling his land due to financial struggles, shared during the launch.
Thanks to the cooperative, I've been able to keep my farm. Now, I'm not just a farmer. I'm part of something much bigger.
Farmers who had once struggled to make ends meet now had a steady income from grape cultivation and winemaking. Napa Valley was no longer just a place for big brands. It had become a hub for innovative, handcrafted wines produced by the very farmers who called the land home. As Sophia and Ethan stood on a hill overlooking the lush green vineyards, Ethan turned to Sophia and said,
"We haven't just helped one family. We've given an entire community a chance to thrive again. This is the true meaning of our dream."
Sophia smiled, her hand clasping his tightly.
And in helping them rekindle their dreams, we've found a greater purpose for ours.
The banquet hall for the celebration stood atop a high hill in Napa Valley, where the setting sun bathed the land in a warm golden-orange hue. Long tables draped in white linen were adorned with sprigs of lavender in clear glass vases, creating a space that was both elegant and welcoming. Sophia stood near the stage, her gaze drifting out toward the lush green vineyard she and Ethan had resurrected from ashes. Laughter and conversation echoed around her, yet a small emptiness lingered in her heart, a quiet longing for her family to witness this moment. Ethan approached, gently placing a hand on her shoulder.
"Do you think Mother and Father will come?"
Sophia asked softly, her voice a mix of hope and hesitation. Ethan smiled, taking her hand in his.
"They'll come, Sophia. They can't help but be proud of what you've accomplished."
As applause filled the hall to signal the start of the tribute, a warm, familiar voice called out from the back.
"Sophia!"
Sophia turned, her eyes widening in surprise. Richard, her father, stood at the entrance, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. Behind him was Eleanor, her mother, her gentle smile betraying the deep emotion she felt. Richard made his way to the stage, his gaze sweeping across the room before settling on Ethan. He approached his son-in-law, pausing briefly as if to steady himself, and extended his hand.
"Ethan,"
Richard began, his voice steady.
"I once doubted you, but today I must admit that you've accomplished something even I couldn't have dreamed of. Thank you, not only for making Sophia's dream a reality, but for showing us all what love can achieve."
Ethan took Richard's hand firmly, his eyes glistening. This wasn't just a handshake, it was the acknowledgement he had once thought impossible. Richard turned to Sophia, his expression softening with pride and a touch of regret.
"I'm proud of you, Sophia. I once thought you were just a dreamer, but today you've shown that love and determination can overcome anything. You've done what even I was too afraid to imagine."
Eleanor stepped closer to Sophia, lifting her hands to cradle her daughter's face. She gazed at her for a long moment, as if to etch this memory into her heart.
"I always knew you could do it, Sophia,"
Eleanor said, her voice full of warmth.
"I regret not being by your side from the beginning, but I've been with you every step of the way in spirit, and I've always believed that with your faith in yourself, anything is possible."
Sophia pulled her mother into an embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks. The two women stood at the center of the room, their embrace erasing all the distance and misunderstandings of the past. After the banquet, Richard sat with Sophia and Ethan in a quiet corner of the hall. A glass of Phoenix blend wine glistened in his hand under the soft lighting. He took a sip, leaning back in his chair with a sigh of satisfaction.
"Sophia, Ethan,"
he said, his tone reflective yet filled with admiration.
"you've created something truly extraordinary. I've been thinking about a partnership, combining my company with your winery. What do you think about building a Napa Valley wine brand together, blending tradition and innovation?"
Sophia looked at her father, her eyes brimming with emotion. Reconciliation wasn't just about words, it was about starting anew, together.
"Father,"
she said, her voice trembling with emotion.
"this wouldn't just be a business partnership. This would be family, a family building the future together."
Ethan smiled, placing a hand on Richard's shoulder.
"We won't just create wine,"
he said.
"We'll create a story about Napa Valley, about love, and about renewal."
The grand hall in Paris glowed with golden light, reflected on walls adorned with intricate, classical patterns. Elegant evening gowns swirled amidst the mingling crowd, their laughter and conversation blending with the gentle strains of music to create an air of sophistication. As Sophia and Ethan ascended the stage, the applause thundered through the room. Sophia felt her heart swell, but it wasn't the admiring gazes or the glittering awards that stirred her the most. In that moment, her mind traveled back to everything that had brought them here: the barren fields, sleepless nights by their first barrels of wine, and the unwavering trust in Ethan's eyes when the world seemed to turn its back on them. Taking the microphone, her hands trembled slightly, but her voice rang out clear and full of emotion.
"When we began this journey, all we had was a dream of rebirth, not just of the land we love, but of hope itself. We didn't make wine simply to drink. We made wine to tell a story about people, about challenges, and about the incredible power of belief."
Sophia paused, her gaze sweeping across the room until it rested on Ethan, who smiled at her from the front row. Gathering strength from his presence, she continued, her voice growing stronger.
"Every drop of our wine is a story that remembers all we have lost but never stops believing in what can be reborn. We want you to taste not only the flavors but the soul of Napa Valley in every glass."
From the audience, an older wine critic nodded quietly, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding.
"Our wine is not just a product, it is a symbol of love, faith, and the ability to rise again from adversity. And we hope that wherever you are, Each of you will find a dream of your own worth reviving.
The entire hall rose to their feet, the applause resounding in an unbroken wave. Ethan stepped onto the stage, took Sophia's hand, and together they bowed deeply before the crowd, their hearts filled with profound emotion. A year after the grand recognition ceremony, Napa Valley basked in the golden hues of autumn sunlight. Endless rows of lush green grapevines swayed gently in the warm breeze, and the air was filled with the cheerful laughter and chatter of farmers busily harvesting the season's bounty. At the heart of the field stood Sophia and Ethan's winery, no longer just a symbol of rebirth, but the thriving heartbeat of the community. Trucks brimming with freshly picked grapes rolled up to the winery, where large wooden vats awaited the first crushing. Ethan stood atop a wooden ladder, instructing a group of young farmers on how to assess the ripeness of grape clusters. Meanwhile, Sophia walked through the rows of vines, chatting with a family that had recently joined the winemaking cooperative. She beamed as she watched a young boy eagerly carrying a bucket brimming with grapes, racing toward the winery with an infectious excitement. Nearby, a group of seasoned farmers gathered at the wine tasting table, raising glasses of unity blend the wine born from the collective efforts of the entire community.
Unity Blend truly lives up to its name,
said an elderly man, his deep voice resonating with pride.
It embodies the taste of unity, trust, and hope.
Sophia and Ethan stood atop the hill, taking in the panoramic view of the vineyard. Below them, the vines that had once been destroyed now thrived greener and more vibrant than ever. The winery, once reduced to ashes, had transformed into a bustling hub of creativity and collaboration. Sophia turned to Ethan, her eyes glistening with emotion.
We haven't just built a dream, Ethan. We've created a community.
Ethan held her hand tightly, his gaze reflecting his pride and gratitude.
And that's what makes our dream complete,
he said. Nearby, workers carefully packed bottles of Unity Blend, ready to be shipped worldwide. Each bottle carried the story of Napa Valley and the resilience of those who refused to give up. The camera slowly panned out, capturing a sweeping view of Napa Valley, its vineyards vibrant, its people joyous, its spirit alive. The golden sunlight bathed the fields, the smiling faces, and the renewed land in a radiant glow of hope and possibility.